engagement both to and from the board, so it means a lot for everybody to show up and partake in these meetings, so thank you for that. I'm going to establish the quorum with 5 of us present. That's enough for a quorum, so we'll go ahead and proceed and call to order. My president's report is going to be short. There's a couple of things that I'm going to wrap up on the back end of the meeting, but just again, quick agenda note. We've made a lot of changes over the course of the last 4 or 5 months, some of which we're going to be touching on tonight as we work to update and implement that, some of which you're seeing on the board behind me. So it's our opportunity to kind of take a pulse on the changes that we've made and to work to ensure that we're tracking in the right direction. And with that, I think the Lake Committee has a proposal that they, Rex?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I need to apologize to you firstly. I got your proposal last night and I didn't see it until just moments before the meeting. So I didn't have an opportunity to float it in front of the board.
Sure.
They've gotten a summary overview of kind of what to expect, but not the details. So if you could just briefly give them a little bit more meat,
Sure
I think that'll help.
Thanks for putting this first.
For sure.
So the proposal is about 3 pages long in the introduction leading up to the recommendation.
Just for you guys to
And the
look at
purpose
some
of
of the
that
pictures.
was I just wanted to orient the board towards the history and the challenges of ponds in case you were unfamiliar. They're nutrient loaded, or lawns and runoff and all that stuff. People's outward flows. Copper is what our contractor uses. It's what all contractors uses, and that's to kill the algae and to keep them from living. It doesn't stop the nutrients from loading into the pond. That's a separate issue. The proposal suggests that we talk to UF or St. John's River Water Management District to see if there's things that we can do to reduce the inputs. That's a long conversation, and they involve education, and so it's a whole separate thing to tackle. It's not as urgent. It suggests that there's some other things that we could do, other conversations that we might have. For instance, it says that we need to start thinking about when and where these ponds might be dredged in the future. So there's communities that have to dredge their ponds, and when they do, it gets expensive if they've got a lot of copper that's accumulated at the bottom, because that's toxic. You can't take those sediments to a landfill. It can get to be hundreds of thousands of dollars for just 10, 15, 20 acres. When we started Google searching it as a Lakes Committee, we are really concerned. So copper's effective, but the dormant cost in there, we're gonna have to pay one day if we have to dredge these things. We have no idea when we would dredge them, when we would be compelled. So it's just a concern of ours. We felt like something we could do right now would be to explore alternatives to treating the ponds with copper. So the narrative in there just outlines what some of those alternatives would be. Floating vegetation mats, that's something that can be looked into. Fountains are really popular, but thank you.
Are they effective?
No.
No.
Most folks, in case you guys don't know, I actually work for the Water Management District. I'm a sediment biogeochemist. I don't deal directly with stormwater ponds. I deal with natural algal blooms. But the folks that run in my circle don't really have a high opinion of fountains, although they're quite popular and many people think they're beautiful. Aerators is another technology. So we have residents that have had experience with aerators in their ponds.
Not in this neighborhood, right?
Yes. So Michael has installed wood in a pond of his, or a pond he's worked with. And so we have folks that anecdotally can tell us that they do some good. We also have some UF research on a neighborhood, I forget where, Daytona somewhere, where they put in the floating mats, shoreline vegetation, the aerators, and the results weren't so favorable. So we sort of, as a committee, are a little bit mixed as to, we can't look you in the eye and say aerators are gonna work, it's gonna save us. So it represents something we would like to test, yes?
Okay, the study you provided had like 2 other methods that they control algae with, that literal.
Yes.
And they were more effective. Literal, shelf planting, and submerged aquatic ventilation.
Yes.
What's your opinion on those?
I don't think littoral planting is going to be viewed favorably by the residents. I personally am in favor for it, but I work in wetlands. I walk around in swamps and natural systems. So my idea of beauty is not necessarily what the typical homeowner's idea of beauty is going to be. Most homeowners are going to want to see a manicured lawn that intercepts a clear reflective surface, and they want to see that reflective surface uninterrupted throughout the expanse of the pond. That's just sort of most people's view of what a healthy pond would look like.
Maybe with a fountain.
Maybe, yeah, with or without a fountain. I don't like fountains because they create waves and then they erode my shoreline. And then I have this little cliff and
It
my
blows
girls
up on your
slip
house.
in and get a fish.
So even though they're more effective,
Fountains
no,
are not.
no, the literal shelf planting and the submerged aquatic vegetation, your committee is just writing them off because you don't think the,
We don't resist it. We're just sort of, we're saying, you have to change your bylaws or AGLs or whatever they're called to change the shoreline, because right now you actually compel people to mow to the shoreline, to fertilize, not fertilize to the shoreline, but you compel them to have St. Augustine grass, which requires fertilizer. So we're really setting people up for failure. We're setting these ponds up for abuse to maintain them in the state that we have.
the homeowners would have to maintain the literal shelf planting?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that would be growing in front of your house.
It would be difficult to have.
Wouldn't
a-
Charles Aquatics do it? I don't want to get off track too much.
Yeah, no, you're not off track at all, and we should explore any and all options. What the littoral shelf planting would do two things, and the report explains that one, it's a direct competition for fertilizer. So you load the ponds with algae food, plant food, and then you grow plants. So every gram of nitrogen and phosphorus that's preserved in their biomass is one less gram of nitrogen and phosphorus than an algal cell can get. So it's a competition. It does another thing that it actually breaks up visually the formation of the mats. If you look at the pictures of that report, and I'm glad you're able to get to it, it's a pretty long report, but the mats are actually in that vegetation, but they're kind of broken up. And that's where these mats form, is in the very shallowest portion where you get the most light. They don't form down in the middle. They form along the edge, and once they get so big, they float to the top, and then once they float to the top, they're actually got a life of their own. They're unique in that they can get nitrogen out of the atmosphere. So now all they need is phosphorus. So they start growing themselves, and they float, and they coalesce, and the wind blows out of the south, and it comes all up in my end, and it blows out of the north, and it moves over to Michael's side. And then we complain, and the lake doctors, or Charles Aquatics, or whoever your manager is, comes in and does the same thing. They spray it with copper to kill it. The challenge there, though, is that you get immediate treatment. You do create a risk for a fish kill if you kill the algae too rapidly. And that's just simple bacterial decomposition. The bacteria breathe oxygen like we do, so if you give them a bunch of food, which is dead algal cells, they're going to drive the DO down and cause a fish kill. So sometimes Charles Aquatics has to throw up his hands and say, I know you guys don't like the mat, but we're not going to spray it that heavy because it's hot. There's a chemical law called Hess's law that says that the concentration of a gas in water is inversely proportional to temperature. So the hotter it is, the less oxygen you have in the water. That's why your cold Coke fizzes when you open it up out of the fridge. You get more gas dissolved in when the water's cold. So if it's in the summer, your DO levels are already low. The fish are already kind of struggling. And then you hit them with a biological oxygen demand by killing an algal bloom, and you can cause a fish kill. So that's why when these mats get out of control, they're just sort of left to sit there. It's not that Charles is lazy or can't spray copper. He's limited by what he can do. If he does manage to control a bloom, every ounce of copper that's put in that pond goes to the bottom. Copper is a metal. There's no gaseous phase of copper. There's no way for it to get back out into the atmosphere, and it sinks. So we can't just, everything that we put in the ponds that we want to leave because we don't like the way it looks, we actually pass that on to the St. John's. So my pond drains to another pond, which drains to another pond, which makes it to the last pond, which goes up to Cunningham Creek, which drains to the St. John's, which causes the algal blooms in the St. John's, red tide, all that kind of stuff. But since we're immediately concerned with our ponds, we're really concerned with A, how can we feed the algae less, and then B, how can we keep them from growing? Copper is the most effective way to keep them from growing. Littoral shelf planting is probably the best way to hide them. Aerators, as I understand they're explained to work, the aerator bubbles from underneath. If it pushes water up, the water would move to the side, and then it's just a circulation.
Yep.
The idea would be if you could circulate the water and move it fast enough, you would inhibit the formation of these mats. That's if aerators are going to work, that's the most likely mechanism. Again, if they were the magic thing, then everybody would use them and nobody would use copper. but we've got some folks that have seen them work, and quite frankly, there's just this frustration by many homeowners that, hey, I'm trying to have a party in my backyard, I see these nasty mats, can we do anything about it? You're trying to sell your house, you got these nasty mats, you can't sell your house for as much because it's not as desirable. So there's lots of things that the Lakes Committee's kicking around, but enough people have brought up the idea of enough homeowners have brought up the idea of aerators, that the committee wants to recommend that a few aerators be put in Lake H as a test case. So the reason Lake H was chosen is twofold. One is it's reported to be the more problematic of all the ponds. It also is not fed by another pond, so you get a little bit more control over what's going in. Let's just say you put the aerators in and nothing bloomed. Well, maybe the reason nothing bloomed is because the other pond that you're in never received anything. Like maybe it didn't rain, so there was never any water movement. So since Lake H is the start, if you don't get a bloom and you put the aerators in, you can say, well, maybe they work.
Where's Lake H?
Lake H is Village Green Avenue,
Okay.
so about halfway down on the right. Bob, if you guys know where Bob lives, he lives in G. So before I was asked to be chair, there was already discussion and movement on the aerators. So that's sort of the momentum that the committee is continuing to take. The committee had already, I guess, solicited some bids. So we have a handful of bids. Charles Aquatics has come in almost half of what the most expensive was, and he's claiming that it'll be turnkey, meaning he's going to install it. So it seems like to the committee it would, if you were going to do aerators, there would be an advantage of letting the guy that's spraying your copper put in the aerators and kind of manage it all together.
Like what size aerators are we talking about? Are we talking about 5-foot aerators,
He's got-
6-inch aerators, every?
He's got the specifics in there. Michael's
Okay.
probably, I haven't really read the proposals that well. He's got
Okay.
4.
Okay.
Some other guys want fewer, some other guys want more. But he's got 4 spec. Michael,
Yeah, I mean, basically these bubblers are single individual bubblers.
Right.
At Lake H, they came out, they did depth sounds, they came up with 4 bubblers to spread out among, it's an odd sort of a oversized boomerang kind of lake.
Sure.
So it would be 4 bubblers. I'm the one that had aerators before. I'm
Right.
a big believer in them. I had a piece of property north of Jacksonville in the 90s.
I mean, yeah,
Huge
I've
difference
used
in
them
mine.
for aquaponics type stuff.
Yeah, the difference is I had a little deeper pond and I didn't have 30 houses around it, you
Right.
know, maybe dumping chemicals or whatever in it. But I'm a big fan of them, to the point that I've actually volunteered to the Lake Committee and to the HOA. First let me backtrack. When we first went to this Lake Committee meeting and brought this suggestion in, Charles Aquatics was there.
Okay.
We asked him which is the most problematic lake in the community. He said Lake H. We were looking at that going, oh, that's the one
That
we
is
live.
ours.
So we've offered, if the board is willing to do it, to have the equipment put on our house, willing to pay the electric bill for a year so they can test it, you know, and we'll absorb that cost because I think it'll make a difference for the community. And it de-stratifies the bottom. It has heavy weighted tubes to each of these bubblers. It pulls that water from the bottom, circulates it, it'll circulate the pond a little over 1 time every 24 hours. So you go from a stagnant pool that's sitting there potentially for months with hardly any rain to it's being circulated once a day. It'll bring the cooler temperatures, mix it up.
You're
with
gonna
higher
need a lot of
temperatures.
aerators to do that.
Well, I mean, these are people that do it professionally, and we
Sure.
had several bids. They came up with 4. There was one company that their aerator system did up to 4 acres.
Okay.
Ours is 4.4.
Okay.
So they said we'd have to go to the next one, which would be 8
Yeah.
bubblers, which would rotate it like 6 times a day. We're like,
Yeah.
we do not need it to be swirling out there. We just need it to circulate. I mean, I personally feel confident enough that if it was rotated every 2 or 3 days, it would be better than no.
And then you
circulation.
have to figure out a place to put the actual pumps
And that's
stuff
what
like
we've
that.
volunteered to do, is
Okay.
we've got a place there on our property that we could put it. We also have a transformer out in our street,
Uh-huh.
and my suggestion would be if the community decides that they like it, then they can pursue places where there are transformers in people's yards, and you can take them in Yeah, Bob.
So what kind of maintenance is required on those? Do the tubes get stopped up with?
No, it's just airflow on that part, but there is a filter that has to be regulated. Jeff Johnson, who's the aerator specialist for Charles Aquatics, spent a little bit of time with me. They recommend that they change this filter yearly. He recommends, because of the compressors that are used on this, that even if the filter gets clogged, the compressor is a piston driven, it will still continue to run, it just won't circulate the water. He was even to the point of, instead of changing it once a year, you could just wait till you see the bubblers aren't bubbling, and then you know, oh, we gotta change the filter. But the key on this, and I've talked to several people about it, you can't just put these in the water and flip them on.
Right.
They go in the water, if you run a half hour the first day, the next day you double it to an hour, the next day is 2, then 4. If you just flip it on, it takes all that stuff that's settled to the bottom, a lot of that copper, a lot of the waste from the animals in the water, and it'll flush it through the system. There'll be so much ammonia, it'll kill everything in there. So, but I've done one before, I've installed ours before. I'm confident
Keep
that they
them
work.
weighted to the ground, I
Well,
mean,
it's
to the bottom.
weighted tubing, so it won't, you can fish over 'em. We've never snagged a line when we had our property before. We fished all the time up there.
So you're not talking about burying it or anything like that?
No, it's a heavy, a very heavy tubing. That's part of the cost of putting in, and then the bubblers are way out there. You wouldn't be able to cast a bubbler.
And then the maintenance costs, like how often do you
Well,
have
they
to
said the
replace
yearly,
tubing?
the maintenance on these are typically, the filters are around $20-25 for the filters.
No, I mean about the tubing and stuff, because obviously.
There is no maintenance
there's
on
no
the tubing.
maintenance
It's a
on the
heavy
tubing.
black tubing that's designed, all you're doing is pressing air through.
Right.
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
he use less copper then in the lake for your?
That would be the goal.
The goal would
That's
be
the
to
goal.
try this with Charles Aquatics, putting nothing else in it.
Great.
And just let the aerators run and see if they can
And
manage
they'll
it.
still have to address weed problems and other things such as that, but the goal is to reduce the volume of chemicals that we're putting in the ponds
Right.
to tackle the
Because we're
algae.
spending money to put chemicals in the pond, and we're gonna have to spend boku money to get them out at some point.
It's
Right.
been a while since I've looked at the price breakdown for what he charges us. I would doubt that a large amount of what he charges us is the cost of the copper. I think we probably get charged for his time and his
So it takes
attention.
time to put the copper in.
Well, my suspicion would be the aerators are not gonna cut into our cost, but we could ask him to tell us that if these aerators reduce the copper, would that reduce our cost? But my suspicion is not that you put aerators in and instead of spending 30 grand a year, all of a sudden, he's only charging us 10 grand a year. Probably gonna represent an additional cost. The hope or the promise of them would be that you're avoiding a much greater cost down the road and not continuing to add the copper. There's a couple of additional companion recommendations. When we were sitting around talking about these aerators, we said, well, if we're gonna test them, it would be nice if we had some additional data to know what's happening. So what are your DO concentrations? Put tracer dye in the water, does the pond look like it's circulating? Do the concentrations of nitrogen and phosphorus over time, when we turn these aerators on and get them running, do those change? So those would be interesting data to have, but other than myself, we're not really a team of scientists that would design a
But I think if we're
experiment.
making
So
that
we
big.
asked Mark Clark, who was the author that studies a UF Extension water quality professor. We asked him if he was interested, and he said yes. And we asked him, we said, well, would you help us monitor it if we had money or could pay for samples? And he said yes. So he wouldn't charge us for his time. If he wanted to know what the nitrogen or phosphorus was, if he wanted to provide us those data, I think it would be kind if we actually paid for those data. I don't know if he has the ability to go measure our nitrogen or phosphorus for free. I haven't gotten that far into the discussion with him because if you guys said, nah, we're not gonna do aerators, I'm not gonna have him spend a couple hours of his time to work up some costs. So I have a companion recommendation in there that you guys, if you vote to use the aerators, that you vote to hold aside some amount of money you feel is reasonable for analyzing these. You guys can, add to that whatever you want, like say, well, we don't want to spend money until next year, or we don't want to know what's going on with the water chemistry, we just want to stare at it and see if they work. That's up to you, just the scientist in me, and I gotta pause, and I know you guys are about to ask questions. None of this is my agency, I work for the water management district. This is not me speaking for the agency. The agency does not think aerators are a good idea or a bad idea. We don't have an opinion on these. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
So I'm not sure that the entire board has seen the proposal. Can we talk money, what this is
Sure.
going to cost?
Before you jump into money, I have a couple of
Yeah.
follow-on questions
Yeah.
for you both. Other than scientific analysis, what litmus test do we use to determine this is a success or not? And what point do we determine that that's true?
Well, in my opinion, I mean, Rex, I'm sure will have a different view on this, but my opinion is, do we have to come out and treat it or not? I mean, typically,
Charles Aquatic should be able to tell us that.
typically it's treated because, it just gets so bad in this particular pond. If you want to come by and look at it, it's right off Village Green and Secret Hollow. You can come over and look at it anytime. There's a layer of all kind of stuff on the bottom of it right now. Hasn't reached the surface yet. But, if we don't have to have them come out and do special treatments at all, as far as I'm concerned, that's successful. But that's an eyeball test, which is not going to be scientific. It's not going to tell you how much nitrogen and, that kind of stuff's in the water. But for me as a homeowner, I just want to see the results.
I'm satisfied with that. Are you confident that the aerator will produce those results within 3, 6, 12 months? What does that look like?
I think if they're put in prior to the summer months, we should have a general idea by the winter or by the end of the year. Because bottom line is our hot months are coming up, and this is when the algae is going to start.
These
popping.
pictures are current?
No, right now,
Actually, February.
yeah, those were
Before
February.
peak.
We
Yeah.
had
Must have
them
hit it
come
with
out.
copper or something, because it's been cleaned.
Yeah, they came out and sprayed.
They
We
come
called
out
them
with
about
copper
it.
in.
To answer your question, one metric you have is, he's had the ponds in his control since about 14 or so.
Right.
So he should be able to give us 5 or 4 years of average copper application, number of trips, how much he's had to apply. So he could probably tell us what a normal year is, and you can even look at
Right.
the temperatures for those years. It was a hot year, I applied more.
And
We should
Brian, if
have
I
enough
might
of a
add-
baseline to judge the upcoming year. If he's using the same amount of copper and the same number of trips,
Yeah,
it-
So to punchline this question, we're going to talk money here in a second.
yeah.
My follow-on question for you to consider as we have this discussion is the roadmap forward. So if we evaluate this, if we approve this proposal today, it gets installed, I think we as a board need to consider what the roadmap ahead looks like. If H is a wonderful success and aerators are the greatest thing since sliced bread, what's the next step for the rest of the community?
Go to the next lake, where.
Sure,
Where, the next lake that's, well,
That's
H
problematic.
doesn't move at all, doesn't feed in, it doesn't get out.
It,
It
H
feeds
is
out.
stagnant.
It
feeds
overflows under high
It
rainfall.
it'll overflow, yeah.
Then I would suggest you go to the overflow, so that, and then the next one.
Well, and when we met and had Charles Aquatics at that meeting that we first met you at, one of the things that he said which struck me, I kind of expected resistance when I brought this idea up to Jim Charles. He indicated in his opinion it should have been a long-term plan of this community for years, was to use aerators. But my suggestion would be, I know, why didn't he bring it up before, I don't know, but he was very positive about it. But my suggestion would be to talk to the lake people and see what's the next most problematic lake and just work in an order of, because I went and looked at, if you come down Village Green in that first lake on the left, I stopped and talked to a homeowner there one day and we walked back and looked at their pond and the bottom was like a sandy, beautiful, God, I wish ours looked like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you should come and look at ours. Ours looks like spinach on the bottom everywhere behind our house. And he's got a hard packed sand that you could fish whatever you want to do back there. I would walk around with, just walk around the floor of that pond, but this one of mine, I don't even step a foot in,
Yeah.
So I would think you just
So-
see which is the next, next most problematic and pursue it that way, in my opinion.
Dr. Clark, Mark from UF, would, even if we had no funds for him to analyze, he would still be interested in looking at the ponds and helping us analyze the results. So there's no reason not to engage him, even during the installation process. I've known him since the mid-90s. He designs treatment wetlands. I mean, he's a really smart guy. He's really passionate. His thing is urban stormwater, and that's what he works with, along with agriculture. So we should engage him regardless of whether we have any resources to pay for the analyses. I'm just a fan of getting a third third person in this to say whether or not these things work. I think the guy that installs them, that we pay the money to install them, is gonna tell us they're working. I mean, I wouldn't tell you that I did a bad job.
Yeah.
So I think having sort of an independent analysis would be helpful. Also, you know, Jim Charles is not he's a contractor, he's not an aquatic scientist, so it seems like Mark would give us some good information. I just don't know what he would require as far as, like, if he wanted to take a water sample.
Let's talk money and then put it to a vote. So the estimated costs based on the proposal and research you guys did?
They ranged from $4,000 to $9,000 roughly. So Charles was the cheapest. So he's coming in at like $5,300. It's there on page 4.
It's $58.29, and that's fully installed. That's compressors, air hoses.
But that's you running it off your,
Well, I mean, obviously the electric is separate. I'll bear that cost for a year. I'm willing to do that.
which we don't know how much it's gonna cost.
According to JEA,
How many amps does each
according to
one of them?
JEA, it should be about $36 a month
36 a month.
for this particular system. There could be other systems that only have, you know, like some ponds are small and rectangular, it might just need 2 diffusers.
Mhm.
You know, so it may require a smaller compressor. Some may need bigger, where you know, we have other bids that have 2 quarter horsepower compressors versus this one is a single half horsepower compressor.
Mhm.
Each one's gonna be different, but there may be ponds that have 2 diffusers or 3, and like J, which is a long sweeping one, might be 2 or 3 small systems. So you can go straight out and then 100 yards each way with 3 diffusers, and then move to another one down the road. So it varies. We've got a very odd configuration of lakes throughout here.
Does every pond have algae problems?
I don't think so. The one I saw that off of Village Green to the left, I'm sure at some
July
point they
and
get
August
them.
is likely.
So
Yeah.
my experience has been at one time or another, they do. But
Yeah.
other lakes have more frequent problems.
Probably the
than
hot
others.
summer months are
Yeah.
the worst for everybody.
I think ours is for Ivy Lakes isn't too bad, except for maybe back by your area. Well, the thin area back
Yeah,
there.
our lake is
I've
pretty
noticed
big.
it change over the years. I've been here since '06, and I've kind of paid attention a little bit. And ponds have sort of come and gone as to which ones were really problematic.
Mhm.
So there's the additions, so we're working on just sort of arresting algal development, but we're not talking about the nutrient additions. It's entirely possible that a couple of homeowners that are taking fertilization into their own hands, it's entirely possible that that extra fertilizer they let sprinkle into the pond could be enough to turn on that corner of the pond
Mhm.
for the years that they're doing that. I don't know, we don't have a nutrient budget for these ponds, so I can't tell you what proportion, like if my neighbor blows his grass clippings out into the street. Well, each grass clipping has a certain amount of fertilizer built in. That blows into the pond, that's a load. Let's say I start over irrigating my pond, or my lawn. I'm leaching most of the fertilizer that I put on my grass straight down into the groundwater, which bleeds into the pond. So there's all these additions. I personally feel birds are probably a huge problem. If you look at the amount that birds poop, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So that changes with time too. So when you say what ponds are problematic, I think that can change with time. I think the ponds that are designed extra shallow and have nooks and crannies that don't circulate as well are probably the ones that are the most problematic.
Is there a way to connect all of them to where we could, instead of having a drainage into one, you know, to kind of connect all of them together?
They are
They
are
connected all
connected.
together.
We're just-
Eventually.
They are
The first
eventually.
pond is the original.
Right, but
start.
that's only an overflow, right?
Yeah.
That's
It
only
flows
an
out.
that's only
Yeah,
an
there's nothing
overflow.
to
So
come in.
if something were to flow in to
Yeah,
where,
it's the original pond, so there's
Okay.
nothing, there's nothing that goes into it other than
Just
straight water.
asking.
Yeah.
And we've also talked about, as a lake committee, trying to do more education to
Yes.
the homeowners that are on the water,
yeah,
to try to get them to curb blowing all their grass clippings in, and don't blow their grass clippings down the drain, and, you
Yeah,
know, don't
that's
throw your
really
dog
nice.
poop out into the lake, and,
Yeah.
you know, just simple things that people may not even think about, you know?
Yeah, we definitely talked about that at the last meeting, that we all met to discuss and come up with some good ideas to get communications out to all the homeowners, especially those on pond. It really is not even just those people that live on ponds, because people that aren't on the pond, their debris can go down the storm drains just as easily. So looking for ways to do that, you know, not throwing bread in the ponds for the fish and the geese.
Do any
more
of y'all
stuff than just
fertilize
more
your
stuff
own
than
lawn?
water.
Any of y'all fertilize your own lawns?
We
I
do.
used to. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you fertilize your own, you go buy the bags. You know about how many bags you buy every year? I mean, you
Well,
kind
we
of get a
do.
feel for that?
Two.
We do 2 bags per application.
Right. So think about stacking all those bags up in a year.
Right.
You do that repeatedly every year to maintain the lawn. So what you're putting in goes out. Otherwise, it would be banking up, and after 5 years, you say, I don't have to fertilize it all, because it's sticking around.
That's exactly
So
what I'm
it's
saying.
pretty much a steady state system to where what you're putting in is eventually getting
I
out.
don't go
So loading's
past,
huge.
I don't go past the pitch where
Yeah, we don't.
where it starts where it starts going down. I don't go past that.
So
I kinda stay-
what's happening is beneath their lawns, my lawn the same, not the same lawn everybody else does, sandy soil, St. Augustine, working.
Yeah.
What it is you're putting it on your roots and then you're irrigating. And some of
Yeah.
that gets taken up by the grass, but most of it leaches down. It gets into the shallow groundwater table, which eventually works its way into the ponds
Right.
and drains.
Yeah.
So it's getting into, what we put on our lawns gets into a pond.
Sure. Right.
I want to thank you guys for the proposal and the work and research that went into providing us the insight. I think as an HOA, it's one of our responsibilities to ensure the aesthetic and beauty of a community, and I think that this is an important issue. To press forward with the agenda, what I'd like to do is hit up a couple of the other proposals that we have on the table tonight so that the board has a clear understanding of each of the line items that we're working to vote on, of which we haven't budgeted for. So these are all going to be additional costs outside of the annual budget that we've created before we vote. So moving forward, thanks again, Lake Committee. Great work.
Thank you.
Rex.
Jim,
Yes.
over the side.
All right. So I do a little moonlighting. I'm also on the Park Association board, which, who in here is from Bridgestone, Lake Cunningham? Okay, there's a couple. All right, good to see you. And so relatively recently, we did a huge investment and overhaul in the playground. The playground was probably original 1998. A lot of memories from it, but it was definitely due for an upgrade. And one of the things we contend with is the fact that only 271 homes do fund the park, which consists of the playground, the pool, the soccer field, and on doing so, it does a good job of creating community. I hope you all been out to Food Truck Friday nights. It's been pretty good. We also have a live jazz band that's coming out this season. But with the park, for whatever reason, the developer way back when must have been like, all right, these two sections are selling really slow. Let's go ahead and put the pool and park in. And then I hear at first, I moved in 2001. And at first it was like everybody was open to it, but then they closed it down, locked it down to just Bridgestone and Lake Cunningham, which, the pool, okay, we have an access card that gets you in and out. But that doesn't do well for neighborhood inclusivity, right? There's others that are left out that don't have a pool that are outside of Lake Cunningham and Bridgestone. So me scouring over the covenants and restrictions, we had some a leeway where we had some powers to be able to try to make things more inclusive. So, I proposed that we start offering non-member pool access, and we did. So this is our 3rd year, and some are, I got repeat customers, and they were very happy to be a part of it. So, all this is just to show that, it's really important that the community come together and enjoy the same amenities. But I'm telling you that playground, that was a great investment. It was a great deal, fantastic deal. And, I just thought it might be appropriate that the larger HOA can help support that because, we don't have a 10-foot fence around it. We don't have an access card, so only Lake Cunningham and Bridgestone can get in, right? I don't want to do that. I don't believe in that, even though some neighbors might say, we should do that. But I'm like, no, that's not the point of being, part of CC, Cunningham Creek Plantation. So, that's why I'm coming to the board this evening and asking for some funding. That's it in a nutshell.
$25,000, what are you asking for?
Yes.
I guess I missed part of this. The funding is for the playground or?
Yes, an investment in the playground itself.
So
correct.
total cost of the playground was?
Total cost was a little over $53,000, $53,933.
And CCPPAI is asking for us to fund that over the course of
5 years.
5 years,
Yeah.
starting in 2020.
Correct.
So with the 2020 budget, at a rate of 5,000 per year, is that right?
Mhm.
And it's open to everybody?
Correct, yes. Yep. And like I said, also the pool is accessible. And we do offer non-member pool access, because it's unfortunate, but, we do have to be cognizant of, it's like limited memberships because, 271 homes, it's a 41-person pool capacity. So, we have to be a little sensitive to that, but the playground is wide open and the field is wide open. And I'll tell you, I've seen in just one weekend alone, right after Food Truck Friday, a lot of traffic. So the playground's a big hit.
So to put this into context, firstly, for those that don't know, Lake Cunningham and Bridgestone pay an additional HOA fee for access to their pool. So that comes with an expense that the rest of us don't pay. Secondly, an Ivy Lakes resident, we have a connector not far from the park, so I know that my kids, 8, 9 years old, we make our way over to the park on occasion, and I appreciate the work that you guys have done in upkeeping that. In fact, I had an opportunity to take a look at it Sunday, since it was finished, and yeah, this is pretty legit.
Say, go big or go home, right?
Yes.
Mention a Facebook or
Yeah.
something, but.
So, I hate to be the bad guy here, but I have to voice strong opposition.
Sure. Okay.
And number one, our dues assessments for CCPPOA, which is a totally different business operation, the dues are received for the sole purpose of maintaining what we're legally responsible for, okay? Which is taking care of the easements, the common area, the lakes. And to do anything of significant costs like that would definitely have to engage a wider community of homeowners, not just this group. And I question whether we could legally spend the money in a charitable contribution outside of our legal obligations. So I think as a board member that we need to do due diligence to see if it's even legal. And second of all, I'm not sure I could support that large of a expenditure.
You personally, or is you personally, or for the expenditure, or
I think as a board
I
member.
could not,
board
I could
member.
not support it
Okay.
as a board member.
as a
Right.
board member? Okay, gotcha.
So,
Always causing problems.
I mean, I'm kind of in agreement there. I think priority should be the
So-
common areas, the lakes, et cetera. Those are addressed.
Um,
The landscaping
Yep.
first.
I will offer to Bob and the board that I asked Jim to put together a proposal. I did not give him any guidance or direction as to the amount requested. And we, as a board, my feedback when Bob brought this concern to my attention a couple days ago was that I am of the mind that although we don't, CCPPOA doesn't directly manage or pay for the park, it is a common area within our neighborhood that I think many of the residents, even those outside of Bridgestone and Lake Cunningham like myself, utilize.
The
And I
key-
think that that's fair. Let me finish. I gave that to Jim. I said, put together a proposal, float it in front of the board so we have an opportunity to look at it. I would offer that if it is something that we're looking to support, but maybe not at that financial threshold, that we just push that back. And I think that that's fair.
So I think the key point is we don't own that property. And so that is a charitable contribution. And I'm not sure when you
I
collect
think
dues
in a
as
counter argument for that is that every community event we have is at that park. Food Truck Fridays, the community board meeting, all that stuff is at that park. If we don't own it, we should be paying rental fees to use that facility.
well, it's the only
Um,
place.
we
to
don't-
do one.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying.
So we don't do the food park. That's not something that this
I'm saying the community
CCPPOA
puts
does.
together, they're using it as a
Right,
community space.
but our business operation for CCPPOA does not do the food court, okay? I agree with you, if we have an event there, we should pay the park. Okay, and one of the things we have done is to have board meetings there and community meetings there, so we should pay a reasonable fee to the park.
Not
Most definitely.
Fair enough. I want to press
Just,
forward.
just as we
Please.
did for the library and the school.
First of all, I want to say, Brian, you've done a great job on our budget, so this year we did not raise our dues, and we didn't the year before, but you indicated we'd probably be raising this coming year.
I did not.
Oh, I kind of got that impression that we might have to, okay?
But that is not my plan.
And that goes along, what else goes along with it? I personally am happy to pay school taxes. I have no kids in the school. I won't have any grandchildren in this school district. But I would have liked to have seen them even raise the taxes for the schools this year and for the library. And, but I have no access, I don't use the schools or anything. And I live in Bridgestone and I pay that money. And I think that if you start to, quote, increase the dues in order to give the association, the park association money, then a lot of people are going to complain about being double taxed.
Concur. I don't think it would be right or just for us to raise dues to donate to CCPPAI. That doesn't sound right or just to me, so I agree.
And where would the money come from?
Yeah.
Where would you
I
pick
guess
it
I
up?
just have one question, and that is, it seems a little late to be asking this, but was there any sort of assessment to the community to put that playground in? Or was there any plan of what if we don't have an assessment and enough money? Are we gonna hope that this part of the community would pitch in? I'm just trying to figure out, because right now you're almost complete with the project, it's
Yeah.
53%.
Well, it's a done deal. It's a
Yeah.
done deal.
So
but
what
I-
was the plan to
yeah.
pay for it, I guess?
It's done and it's financed and everything. Everything's good to go. But I was just looking for a partnership and investment, because if you think about it, there's 660 homes in our community, right?
Right.
And 271 fund the park and pool, which is fine. But I'm just looking for a way, like, how can we,
As a community.
as a community, just create more support of the playground, because like I said, there's some that suggest put the 10-foot fence around and put an access card in it, but who wants to do that, right? I mean, well, it needs to be open, an open area.
So are we gonna find out if it's even legally feasible to do?
Yes, so Gina's working to reach out to Dale to confirm that the HOA can legally commit to that donation. We can defer the vote until after that if the board is so inclined.
But if we do make the donation, wouldn't our dues have to be increased to cover that? Or no?
No, I don't believe so. Depending on the amount that we commit, we currently have a contingency fund that is approximately $200,000. That is not earmarked for anything. Additionally, in this past budget, budget we just created, I earmarked our budget to account for expenses coming up, including the fence, which, if I want to be completely transparent, I don't know is in line with the guidance that, Bob, you're suggesting. The money is only utilized for common area and for easements. Fences, yikes in my mind. And that's a huge expense, that fence that runs along the street. Does everybody know what I'm talking about?
On Tiger Creek?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, with that in mind, I would. Are we talking about the fence?
I'm sorry. Actually,
No, you're good.
we're going back to the fence. It was the green fence at one time, sorry.
Was it? I don't know. I might be a little late to the party, but. It is my goal as the president of your HOA to ensure that we're being transparent and being right with the money that we're in custody of, that we're responsible for. So it's important to me to make sure that we're vetting this accordingly. We'll work with Dale. We've taken a look at our bylaws and our CCNR. Dale will confirm that we're not in violation of any Florida statutes. We'll have an opportunity with the board here to discuss and vet. Maybe not at the 25 threshold, maybe some other number.
So, and will there be a process for homeowner input? Will there be a budget meeting publicized? I think that would be required.
Okay. That is all fair. Next, I want to kick off to Jen for the landscaping proposal.
All right, so in January, we started reviewing the performance of TLC, our landscape company. We found it wasn't going so well. They had a little, like a lack of response there, so we started looking for another landscape vendor back in January. We completed the RFP, we sent it to several landscape vendors. We invited those vendors to attend a site visit to walk our community. And we asked them to create 2 proposals. The first one to tell us how much would it cost for a one-time enhancement fee, and the next, what would our yearly fee be to maintain everything that we have. And 4 people submitted proposals, 3 of which attended our site visit. And we decided to kind of create this document to compare the 4 different companies. On page, 2 through 4, we compared the vendors, and on page 5 through 6, we came up with some follow-up questions for those vendors specific to some of the issues that we were having with TLC, things that we knew were like how long would it take you to get out here? How long, if we had a problem, some different things that we've encountered. Based on all that information that we collected, we decided that North Florida Landscape would be our best vendor to go with. Their annual cost to our community would be $54,675. The one-time enhancement estimate is about $24,438. And that includes us focusing on the Roberts Road main entrance and Tiger Creek Parkway. And then there's a breakdown below with kind of what the estimates were for each place, for each monument, for each area of our community. So we are proposing that we go with North Florida Landscape for our vendor for landscaping, which is actually the same landscape company that does the pool area. So we have had good feedback with them, and reached out to other people who have used them and they had pretty good feedback as well.
Jim, do you want to speak to them?
Yeah, it's Craig and a family outfit, and we've been using them for years. And when I became the board member, we had a meet and greet and talked about plans for the park, enhancements, and the landscaping just needed some love and attention. So a couple of years ago, Craig put together a really nice, easy design to where my biggest push is I want natural habitat, stuff that will live through the seasons here in Jacksonville, and he knew right what to do and answer, and it's come along very nicely. So they've been responsive. They're a text away, they're an email away, a phone call away, and just like right before the Food Truck Friday, we had that one storm come out. One of the maple trees, one of the limbs snapped. Called them, and they came out Friday right before Food Truck and hauled it away. So I mean, they were good.
And with the 4 vendors, North Florida really have the most detail and the most, when they literally sent pictures with this is what we would put here, this is how we would move this here, very detailed information, so that we can kind of really get a vision of what we would be getting with them if we went with North Florida.
Can I ask a question? On the budget, it shows landscaping contract, and it's what you just talked about. But then down below, there's a section that's repairs and maintenance. Is that separate companies where someone's separate doing irrigation, someone's separate doing the plantings? Because that's another $30,000.
So our irrigation is in bad shape. And we don't want to spend any money to landscape when we can't water it. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is get a complete overhaul of the irrigation system. So part of our one-time enhancement cost could go to that. That is definitely a huge.
Well, I was just trying to figure out if that repairs and maintenance fell under the
It is the same
landscaping.
company.
Yes.
May I suggest that you try to get as much native or near native stuff, which means that it doesn't require as much water and it doesn't require fertilizer, except probably in the beginning to get it established. And that would help everything. I mean, it would help our ongoing costs, and it would help on everything.
I think
That's the vision.
It goes back to appearance. People want flowers the whole year, and you can't really get perennials that are, bloom in June and July, and the rest of the year they're dead. So that's what a lot of this is they take plants out every season, they put in the ones that bloom, and It's a visual thing. You can't-
Also, some of the things is they said our flower beds are really big, even the corner ones, they suggested condensing them, putting grass in, but then,
Bushes,
Yeah.
stuff
but then
that's made
also
for
that way you
neighborhood.
would have more money for,
Right.
So I want to highlight something for the board real quick. Currently in our budget, we have $55,000 assigned for the landscaping contract. So the North Florida proposal falls right in line with that. Additionally, we have budgeted $12,000 for flowers and mulch and sod, which we haven't spent to date. So that could go towards the $25,000 proposal that's being brought to us tonight. And that's already been accounted for in the budget. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Questions, thoughts?
Yeah, so Jennifer, my real concern is having a process to monitor and to have a vendor relationship. So we give feedback and they give us feedback. And so that's my big takeaway from experience with landscape companies. If we don't have a good mechanism for that, then we're gonna have it be in the same situation 6 to 8 months from now. So I think that's something that as an HOA, that we need to try to, own that relationship or have someone manage that relationship and hold the landscape company accountable.
I agree. That was definitely one of the biggest things with TLC, is us contacting them and nothing happening. There was that lack of relationship to say, hey, this is something that we need done, and it just would go, incomplete. So I do agree, that is huge. And it's good to read through some of these recommendations where, they've said, these people have said this is why we'd recommend them. One of them is the relationship, but this is not a huge corporation. Like one of the people that came was Trimac, and I think that this is a little bit more mom and pop type shop. Like this is what's literally putting the food on their table. They care. That's kind of how it came across through the site visit. So I think that says something too, that it wasn't,
So how large is the company and how long have they been doing the work?
So they went through and did an entire, they did submit all of their, here's our experience, based on their experience there, and every company stated, we will have enough of our crew to service your area. So that means that if we're cutting back crepe myrtles, we're gonna send enough people that gets done in that visit, not over a month or 2 month span, like was what happened this past year. So I think for each company, it kind of depends on what they're doing and when. Another thing I liked about North Florida is they actually said, we'll come up with a care plan, like the plan, so you know what's happening when, and that way they can assign, these are the 4 people that are coming out because on this day we're doing all of this, or this is the 3 people or whatever they have going on in that care plan for that month.
Jen, I want to follow up on Bob's previous question. Does the committee have an action plan to ensure that we're holding up our end of the bargain? Like who's going to be our point of contact to say that's an issue, make sure that gets done, come see me when this is taken care of, sort of stuff?
Do you mean as far as like all irrigation, all landscape? Because I think
Generally?
so as a community, like when Terry walks in the morning, like she's good about sending me stuff that happens in her community. Things that just happen throughout the community, I think that it's everyone's responsibility to say, hey, this tree fell down during this storm, or this area, like I'm just not gonna be able to see everything in that community.
Do they contact you then, and will you be the point?
I think they need to contact Gina,
Okay.
because
Right.
they all have a paper trail.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't get filled, then we'll just contact Gina saying,
I will
hey.
offer you this, it's everybody's responsibility to call out fire, but generally not everybody does. So I think it's incumbent upon us to ensure that when we see something wrong, especially those in the committee, that they're highlighting it, making sure that Gina is, reach out to Gina, have her take action, follow up to ensure that things are done. Terry, you're a rock star, love you.
Yes, very much so.
But Terry can't be an army of one, and
Right.
part of the purpose of the committee is to ensure that those things are taken care of. So I would just ask you, in terms of Bob's question and comment, to make sure that there's an action plan in place.
I'm gonna be sending everything to Jennifer, and Jennifer is going to be related to Gina. So,
Well, and one of the things I was gonna bring up is we had an issue a while back, I think right before our meeting, where we had some of the ponds in different areas that were sort of exploding. There was a lot of conversation going on Facebook, and everyone was like, who do we reach, who do we reach? And some people were like, well, I don't know Gina, how do I reach Gina? So I'm not even sure that it wouldn't be a good idea to have a contact person for maybe each committee somehow in Facebook that could say, okay, I'll call. I mean,
Or-
because once I saw the comments, I sent pictures to Gina, and they were out there within a couple days, they sprayed the lakes and it squared it away. But there has to be, a
You
lot of people
actually have a
have
legitimate
Facebook,
website that works that
but
you
you
can
gotta have
actually use
someplace,
for
because I don't
that.
even know what the community website is. I see stuff on
Exactly.
Facebook, everyone comments on it, and I'm like, oh, okay, there you go.
Facebook can't be the all, end all
And
be
And I
all for
wonder
the
if we could
community.
post something on our new website that could say, you know, see something, here's a place where you can submit something.
We can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
So and I've got
See
I've
something,
got
say
an
something.
agenda plan for that. Right. Any other questions, thoughts in regards to
So is the
landscaping?
committee proposing to the entire treatment of each of the monuments and stuff? How much did
So,
you say
so
that
what
was?
I would propose, we consider, one, we need to vote to switch the contract. That's gonna require a board-wide vote. And two, we vote on the 25,000 one-time assessment. And I would offer to the board and consider,
Assessment?
not assessment, one-time
Enhancement.
enhancement, thank you. And I would offer to the board, if the budget number is a concern, right, we've already got $12,000 not spent earmarked for landscaping, we can work from that number forward. And then request that if the 12,000 is the number that we offer, then the committee works within that budget to
Yep.
do the one-time enhancements that you feel is the right.
Because before any of these even start, the irrigation's first. So
Mm-hmm.
these are, you know, in theory, what it would take to beautify that area, but realistically, we have to start with irrigation.
Which I saw
Of
TLC
note-
out there today, so they're apparently doing some irrigation work in Village Green.
Of note, we have a separate budget line for irrigation repairs, so don't get caught underneath the wheel in terms of, well, I gotta get all the irrigation fixed in that $12,000 or $25,000.
So the 25,000 enhancement, that's what it, and if we need to work within that budget, so we can say, switch those rose bushes out there 18 and put us down to yellow, blah, 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 for 4, just to keep us in that $25,000 budget.
Anything that's outside of the landscaping contract at the 54,800, whatever number, yes, that's accurate. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Okay, let's do some voting.
So the 25,000 one-time enhancement is including the irrigation as part of it? It's completely separate?
It's completely separate,
Okay.
because they have to diagnose, once we
Okay.
approve to go with them, if we approve to go with them, then they will come out and say, this is what it would take to fix the irrigation.
Okay, so there's not even a number with that?
Right.
And that's fair. Let's start with the Lake Committee's proposal. So the Lake Committee proposed a test run of the aerator system on Lake H at a cost of $5,829, utilizing Mike as a homeowner to run the pump on his property for 1 year. As part of that test sub.
With approximately 4,
Not planning on moving?
No.
with approximately 4 aerators.
4 bubblers,
And a half horsepower pump.
yes.
Okay.
Installed.
Fully installed, all the tubing, complete installation.
Please.
So I'm totally in favor of it, but one thought is when, after a year, what's it gonna cost to connect that to actual, community power? Should be something to consider. I mean,
Yeah.
$5,600 do it, great, but, you know, for.
Said essentially
In comparison to the
$36
other
a month for.
Right, but at some
the
point, it's
4.
gotta go from his
It's gotta
house to the
have a
community
direct
route.
connection.
How much
So,
is that
I can
gonna
answer that.
cost?
I can answer that. And first, let me ask you a quick question. I had one of the contractors tell me the other day that all the street lights, and I see there's an electrical thing, but are the street lights paid for by JEA or the community?
Community.
Okay, so that's really good, because there's a transformer at my house, there's a street light at my house, there's an access panel at my house.
Yeah.
And the contractor was like, no, you'd have to have JA come out and put a new power pole, blah, blah, blah. If that's all controlled and held by the community, it would be easy. What happens is the compressor's gonna go farther towards the front of my house, right behind my fence. There'll be a single large line that runs to a junction box at the corner of the lake of my property, and then those feeder lines go out. So if you decide that everything works good and you want to, after a year, say, let's move it up to the transformer and hook it in, then it's just a simple running a line from the relay box to the front of the street. It's 100 feet of hose instead of a 60-foot piece of hose, and that will feed this junction box out.
Which
It's
is
just
lucky,
air.
or we have to have all that right on our property.
So for the board to consider, I have reservations about a pump on a homeowner's property.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, why don't we connect it
Just do
up
it
like
already
that
connected
in
to
the first
PA,
place instead of
because
waiting a
It's
year?
gonna cost a lot more than just $36. I know for just a water meter pump, it's $1,150 for a 3/4 inch pipe to come out for just sprinkler stuff.
Yeah,
No,
so we don't
no.
pay by usage, we pay by pole. There's a
Okay.
fee set by the lamp,
Right.
for
There's
that.
there's no hard piping going on this. This is a heavy-duty black hose that'll just be trenched in the yard. And it'll go from the compressor. You don't have to have a relay box. You can run four lines off the compressor, but you're using 4 lines to get to the edge of the water instead of one large line, and then splits off. You can control each bubbler. One may be farther away and it needs a little more air than the one that's 100 feet away. It might need less air. But I don't think it would be difficult to move it. I've got a transformer and a power pole with a little access panel on it. At some point, it could be just done, but like I said, I'm willing to bear the cost of the electric for a year and let you see if it's even feasible for you to continue to do it or not. If after a year you guys go, this has done nothing, then you may say,
We unplug it.
Does-
we don't want to continue doing
Does
it.
anybody else live on Lake H here?
Rex does, okay, good.
So,
neighbors.
general question, is there any place on Lake H where we can put this pump that wouldn't be on Mike's property, that wouldn't be on somebody's property? Like,
There should be an easement that the
There's
lake
gotta be
doctor
an
uses to get to the
There
lake.
is, and he talked about putting power there, but he would have to go underneath the road. He said it would cost 3 times the cost of the whole system to try to run power under the road to put it.
How
on
about
transformer.
solar power?
I don't know if it's
Once,
solar
once you
power.
install it, it's.
Not on a pump like that.
So
You'd
can,
be-
can I make a recommendation that the board, first of all, number one, I would make a proposal that certainly their assessments be waived for carrying the electric for the first year. And second, that we get a proposal or some type of solution, what it would take to put electric in there. And if
Well-
it's under 1,500, then it's a no-brainer, move forward. If it's over that, then it probably needs to be reassessed.
Yeah, and he told me that he thought it was around that range, but he also did not feel like that those transformers and power poles, he thought they were all paid for by JEA and those could not be used. This is a simple 12, 13 amp little compressor. You can plug it into your bedroom plug and run it. So I initially thought, wow, why couldn't you use the access panel and the street light, put a separate little plug there, plug it up, and it sits out there by the
We
street
play
light, doesn't bother
purple.
anyone. Well, we're all paying for the electric, so whether it's $35 more to run a system is.
this is the first time I've heard it's good news that we're paying for the electric.
I know.
Yeah, really.
I actually, the guy thought that JEA just paid for the neighborhood or part of their deal, but I don't, it didn't make sense to
Wouldn't you
me.
assume? Thoughts, vote?
They don't charge us for the electricity, we just pay $5.
So we could get done this yearly test, and then we would have to figure out what to do with the electric. And if it's too much, we wouldn't, even if the other thing worked, we wouldn't go forward with it.
Well, and my suggestion
Well-
before is I'm willing to leave it at my house and just waive my HOA fees. I don't care. I mean, it's $30 a month and it's
Well,
gonna
we
be
don't-
close to that, so.
It sounds like we don't think we should do that.
Well, I think what we should do is weigh all of our options, is Bob has proposed. Let's
Right.
take a look at what it's gonna cost to get electric from wherever that would come from and see what that cost is and make that decision based on that. My only reservation about this is, I think an encumbrance on your home for the HOA for a pump, although, it sounds to me like you're vested in being in this house forever, may not be true, right? And I hesitate to
Right.
Say
encumber
something
you with
happens.
that, because
Right.
that,
Gets
right?
hit by a train.
Is there a way to put a light pole
Still
right at that open area, Village Green, and then you can run it right from that?
There's a
pole?
way to run wires under sidewalks.
Yeah, I mean, there's always
super
options if you're willing to spend the money to do any of it. It's like he was saying, you
Well,
can
I mean,
dredge
is it
underneath the
cheaper?
road and put.
Just throw a light pole right there.
But those pole, we pay for the pole.
Right.
With the light, so if we increase the electricity load, then we're gonna have a problem.
No,
Well,
not
we have a
necessarily.
problem.
Those lights,
So-
I'm sure those lights can handle
So
what do
it's
you
nothing
think?
we're gonna
10
handle in
amps?
this room. I would suggest that we find out what our options are.
Right.
And that, and then come back with that, and
Is there an
then
electrician the community uses for work, or?
I would go to JEA
So,
and ask
a
them.
couple things to consider. One, I think the proposal in front of us is contingent on installation before the summer.
Yes.
In order to be able to verify this is effective. So it's incumbent upon us to determine whether we're comfortable with this arrangement.
Well, the point of this was to put it in my
Test.
place so you can
For the
use it
test.
immediately.
It was a one-year test.
There is a transformer on our property, you could put a JEA power pole at it, they said, a small one, which would just independently run off the transformer and build to the community as well, but
What are we willing to invest for a
if
one-year
you
test?
wanna test it this summer, it's gotta be done relatively quickly.
I propose that we vote on the proposed expense, $5,829, plus the $288 annual HOA fee that we would be waiving for Mike for the opportunity to host this on his property.
So I think the proposal comes from the committee. As president, you can't.
Okay.
Okay.
Feel
Second that proposal?
free, feel free to propose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to accept you waiving the HOA fee, it's not necessary. I feel adamant that these are gonna make the community better. You can take the proposal as is, or you can add to waive it, it's totally up to the board.
Wait.
Okay, waive.
I agree.
Is the board in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully we can thank each other
I
after
know.
that, so.
Yeah, I've lived there since 2005, and I've watched that pond every year
Okay.
go nasty cesspool, so I'm
Next.
praying that it works too.
The CCPPAI proposal. Table it?
We need to
Table it?
know
Are
if
you
it's
good
legal.
tabling it? Tabling it? All right, table till next committee meeting. Next is the landscaping committee. Will you propose first the switch?
I've never proposed, let's try. Okay, I propose that we go with North Florida Landscape for $54,675 for our annual contract, and then we do a one-time enhancement fee to not exceed $24,438.
Okay, I want to vote on one issue at a time. The switch of the contract. You're fine. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is so. Secondly, the one-time enhancement for $25,000. All those in favor?
So what is our total budget for landscape outside the 54,000?
$12,000.
12,000.
So it's an additional $13,000 cost. Is the lake committee prepared to support 12,000 of that 25,000 budget? Is that something you can work with them?
The lake
You're talking about
committee
Laker
is.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I opened it.
Can you work with that?
We just gave you up there.
Fountains, anybody?
I'm
Sorry.
sorry, say that again.
Are you prepared to work within 12,000?
We will work within whatever we get. I think we can make positive changes with whatever
Okay.
we can be given, so.
Put all this into context, Terry and I have been working with each of the committees. As I had said at the beginning of this meeting, part of our agenda for this year is community engagement. And we started that by reaching out to each of the committees to get them engaged, find out what the challenges, the hurdles are, and to address them. And the landscaping committee has knocked it out of the park. So firstly, thank you for the work and effort you guys have put in. That means a lot to me, the board, and the community as a whole. Secondly, appreciate the commitment to spending less money. It is with that in mind that I think we as the board members need to recognize that, like with the lakes, there's going to be a roadmap and a follow-on plan. So know that what we're not paying today is going to cost us again later in the future, and that is something that we'll vet in the fall when we take a look at the budget. But I know that the landscaping committee is committed to making our neighborhood, I'm not going to say great again, that would be funny, but I won't say that. Making our community beautiful.
Yeah, really.
And they have big plans, so I just want to put that out there. Is it the board's desire to vote for the 12,000? Yes, 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 okay.
And does that include the irrigation?
No.
No, so it's
So,
separate.
and we will fund irrigation costs that aren't wildly out of control, so know that you have our support.
Because
I mean,
it's
unless
unmet.
the irrigation is gonna cost $50,000 to repair, in which case we're gonna have to reassess. None of this magic happens unless there's water involved. I don't know a whole lot about landscaping, but I know that. I've actually learned a lot, so, yes, you have.
Sprinklers now.
Yeah, that's what I know. All right, so 12,000, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and it is a thing. All right, so those are our votes. I want to turn it over to James to do our treasurer's report with, please bear in mind, we've got about 15 minutes left.
For the website one?
Yeah, I'll do the website last.
Not sure what.
Just an overview.
Overview?
Quick summary. So we closed out 2018. I think we've got the tax. In fact, do we have that to sign? The tax. Perfect. Awesome. So financial
Letter,
report is.
right? Or the tax return?
The tax return.
No,
She
you-
said she was
yeah.
mailing it, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't get a letter sent to her, so.
So part of our responsibilities is a financial report, which we've completed, a tax return, which we are waiting for, and that should be submitted shortly. Just a general overview, James, if you would, of kind of where we're at financially.
I don't have the ARs. Do you have them pulled up anywhere, or you don't have them?
The accounts receivable?
Yeah.
It should be on the front page of the balance sheet.
Oh, yeah, the income statement. That's what all she sent.
It was 50 something.
Yeah, okay, so it's throwing out stuff. So around 50. It was 60 in February, so it's 50 now. Overall, everything's under budget so far. I don't see any huge changes except we just voted on. Changes everything, but I think generally we're a little more cautious on our budgeting and trying to be more accurate. So we're watching expenses with actuals in terms of just what did we actually spend on this last 5 years versus this budget's always been $5 grand, just leave it at $5 grand. Because we tend to have leftover money at the end of the year, which is good, but then it goes into the reserve and we don't ever talk about that again. So if it's money that we're collecting that we could be using for things like fixing irrigation and bubblers and things that we need to discuss it now instead of just putting it to the end. So overall, I think our biggest thing is the ARs and getting them sorted and cleaned up, figuring out what's aged and trying to get a policy in line for what to do about old stuff.
I know that we need to have a discussion in regards to the allowance for doubtful accounts. And that's a board thing that we're gonna need to sit down and knock out at another time. It's probably gonna be a separate board meeting just to address that alone, because it's a pretty big issue. Not big issue, but big enough topic where I think it's gonna need its own dedicated time. So we'll look at putting together a meeting specifically for that. Let's see, art committee update.
So I have a couple of financial questions. So what was the status of what we paid to repair the pump and the well? And what were the issues? And second of all, is the board gonna get monthly reports? Because I haven't seen them in a while.
Yeah, I got sent reports.
Okay, I haven't seen any in probably 3 months.
Okay.
I think you haven't seen them because-
I can send it to the entire board,
yeah.
but when you were president, I was only sending them to you.
Yeah, well, they go to the entire board, I believe.
So my vision for this, and I'll pick this up. My vision for this is for us to have a link, which I'm currently working with Gina, so that Gina just sends out a link and then each of us can just click on the link and bring up the report. And that's just a logistical thing that Gina and I are gonna work out, so that everybody here, us, the board, has access to those reports.
Okay, and what's the status of the pump and what did we pay?
The pump, was that in March financial report? I can get the cost for you and email you tomorrow.
Do we
I don't know
know
it off the top of my head.
Irrigation reserves?
Yeah.
the well?
Current, 283.33, oh wait, yeah, actual 1930.70 is actual.
1937.
So Partridge charged us 1,937? That doesn't sound right.
No, it doesn't sound right. It's just what it says for actual current. These are.
Yeah,
So
I,
we owe that answer to you.
yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
And we also need to know what happened out there
Mhm.
with the pump and the well.
My understanding was that we were going to be charged for manpower, but not for parts since they were still under warranty.
Correct.
So we just need to confirm that.
My understanding was that we were charged for the pump and we were not charged for the, but they came out twice, once to repair the pump and then it actually was bad and they came back out and replaced it again. And then they replaced the tank and that was under warranty and they charged us warranty for, labor for the latter two. So I would like to see the total price and what they said the reasons for the repair were.
Thank you for that, Bob. You ready to dig in with York?
Yeah, so there was a letter that we generated a long time ago that was supposed to go out to all homeowners for the new system. Can we send that out? Or?
Yes.
Which was supposed to be sent out months ago.
Well, yes.
So,
Thank you.
there's a new system that we're using for the ARC committee. We actually are paying for this service, and so every homeowner can see every architectural review request that comes in. So you just log in as a homeowner, and you have public access to everything that's submitted and what the committee's if it's approved or not approved and what the questions are surrounding it. So it's supposed to be a public forum for all homeowners, so it's important that that letter gets sent out.
Is it also that you can see prior requests,
You
or
can
once they
see-
close, the homeowners that are not in the art committee can no longer see them?
You can see your prior request,
Right,
but not, if you're not on the art committee.
right. You can see all the live requests, but once it's archived, once it's been approved or denied, then it goes.
So you can't see the final decision?
You can,
You can see the final decision
for
For
yours.
your project.
for your project, and you can see the final decision on existing projects, but once it's like, what happens is if it's approved in 2 days, then it's archived and you can't see it,
Okay.
okay?
So you
So
wouldn't
if
be
that
able to
is,
see if someone did a
And I just
project
wanna know-
and actually got permission or not?
Right, yeah, and I just want to note
Yeah.
that nobody on the architectural review board is an architect. So let's just note that down real quick.
I'm
So-
not a landscaper, but I'm
So,
trying
so
to
that's a good
landscape.
question about being able to see it in the past. I can ask about that. I don't know if that's a system issue.
I think it would be
or
helpful to be
whatever.
able, to be able to.
It
see
would be
that.
helpful.
Right.
Because
see.
then
Well-
you could say, oh, my neighbor did get approved for this.
Yeah,
Or,
'cause
or like the roof that
See a
just
big
went up.
project that happens and it's
Yeah.
like, did they get permission to do that?
Yeah, like the roof that just went up out on the architectural review board.
So my,
What's
So-
around?
my understanding, and
You know.
correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, is that 3 days?
I think
Is
it's
how
open
long?
for 3 days and you
Yeah.
can see the status, but then it gets sent to an archive. So I'll see if there's some way, the board has access to it, I can tell you that. If they log in as board members, they can see everything. And,
Yeah, it would be a
but-
little awkward to just go check on a neighbor that you might not want to have a conversation, but it's like,
Yeah, I think there's a benefit for someone saying, you know, hey, did they have permission to build that fire pit on the bank of the lake? Or- I hope not.
I-
So,
I would offer to the community, if you have a question about something that was or wasn't approved, you can always reach out to Gina to confirm.
okay.
Definitely reach out to Gina.
okay, and we are still, anyhow, there's still some logistical issues, and Gina and Robert and Bryant and I will continue to hound this.
Okay. With that in mind, we are going to roll this thing out immediately. In fact, one of the things that I wanted to vote on tonight was the usage, the transfer of the website, which I'm going to demo for you guys behind me here in a moment. My vision was to align this letter that we're going to send out for the art committee TOPS 1, this new website, to kind of just one letter to outline all these changes, updates for our committee so that people know that there's things going on, to get engaged, etc. And my goal was to have that be one letter rather than 5. So that's kind of why we waited till this point, so that I could get the board's input on this this website and roll it all out as one. So, agenda, let me kick it over to Terry. Terry, do you have any updates for us, just community-wide in regards to the
For the
committees?
committees, Well, we started off with the art committee and got that committee going in early January, and then we started on the landscape committee, trying to get those people together and form that landscape committee, got that one going. Then I started working on the lake committee, got some people recruited into that committee, got that kind of filled up. But then in early March, I tried to get the website, newsletter, welcome committee, traffic safety, joined them all together, reached out, tried to get that going, and nothing.
Okay.
So
we
that's
need
why
volunteers.
we haven't got that newsletter out yet. Because we were shooting for June 1st and get it on.
There's 3 people right behind you, sign them
said
up.
that you wanted to be on that one, but I haven't got any board for help. Okay.
It's just you.
You wanna be
Do you need
solo?
to-
Now,
I have
I'm
to
in
have a board of
the,
liaison too.
I'm in the traffic and safety committee, and when I joined that committee, it was part of some projects that were going on with sidewalk access and getting a crosswalk painted and the traffic study that they did.
Right.
And I feel like those particular items are done, and there's not really a need for that committee in its current form. I don't know what you all think about that, but
That's why I was thinking maybe having them join together, so if you're walking down the sidewalk and you trip, well, there is a number you can call Pride and call the county, and they'll come out and sand it right away, rather than waiting for the county people to come out and see it. But that would be part of the safety, if you're walking down the street and the light's out, that's part of safety.
But I don't know that that's that you need a committee for that.
If you
I don't
join
know.
all those committees together, then it will be almost a full-time committee like these other 3 committees.
Mm-hmm.
So to put this into context, because your committee is not the only one that faced those challenges, my goal is to ensure community involvement and engagement. So if there's a desire within the community for people to come together to tackle a challenge, I want to be able to support that. The goal for the board members as liaisons is not to run those committees. Bob's a little bit more engaged. I think the ARC has got a little bit more challenge to it in terms of its responsibility, its role, and the implementation. Please let me finish. So Bob is heavily engaged in that. But I think generally, and correct me if you guys disagree, I don't know that, like, would you suggest that you're completely hands-on, the landscaping committee?
No,
Lakes committee?
No.
Okay. So it's not my goal for you in terms of traffic or safety or outreach or whatever, for you to have to be the one that does the magic. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, there are those occasional items, but I don't know.
Okay.
Also, I didn't feel like I really wanted to write a newsletter. Ever.
Right. So and that's fair. That's fair. I'm not asking for board members to write newsletters. What I'm asking for is Terry, by the way, who's our community engagement director. She's responsible for coordinating our volunteers. So find a volunteer who's interested in writing newsletters or people that are interested, and then the board members are just liaisons. So to be able to provide guidance, like the proposals that we heard tonight, that was, by and large coordinated with board direction guidance, if you will. Is that fair?
Okay. So what would it be called? That is quite a lot to merge together. What would that committee be called?
The Everything Else Committee?
The Everything Else Miscellaneous
Task force.
Special Task Force.
To be
my
determined
word.
at a later date. Terry, I'm hearing you, and I know that there's a desire for this. Let's sit down, sidebar afterwards, and come up with a game plan as to how we can make the magic happen. With that in mind,
sounds
we've
good.
got 4 minutes left. Gina, do you have anything of note for the property manager's report? Okay, cool. I want to quickly just demo the website that we're proposing.
What's the Alvin Lakes property for sale?
Yes, thank you for hitting that agenda point. So there are a couple of common area lands that we own that were sold to us. Is that in fact sold to us from the developer, thank you, that we've talked previously in other board meetings about selling. We had them appraised by a real estate agent who does this for a living. The price, the value came back significantly higher than we expected. Yeah.
So if we sell these lots, people can build a house on them?
Yeah, they're not big enough for house lots.
So what would they
They're-
do with them if they paid $41,000 for it?
Is that common knowledge? Does everybody know what that is? That's what it is.
It's public, it's
Okay.
publicly available.
I didn't know that.
I think so, from what I found, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, they were assessed around $40,000, and I don't think $40,000 makes sense. And I don't think that that's what our intention was for the board. So part of the purpose for the agenda and PS, Watson was kind enough for us to use this space for free, and Amelia is waiting on us, so I don't want to take us any further past 8:30. Part of the reason for that agenda point was so that we could discuss whether we legitimately wanted to sell the property, at what price point, and how we proceed determining that. Because the first point that we had when we first started talking about this was to determine the value.
Do we have buyers, like, do the people in the adjacent property want to buy this?
Yes.
Okay.
So they would take care of the property,
I mean,
whereas
yeah.
right now. the-
Yeah, I do think, well,
Please, please.
I was just gonna say, I would like, so this is critical, you get that done, so it is an agenda item that should come back up again, so you might wanna table that, but, there are people interested in some of these common areas that would make sense to sell.
So we buy it, we can store a boat there?
I'm sure it's not gonna be awesome.
Just curious.
Or other things.
Right.
Campers, boats.
So what you're seeing is the updated version of the HOA website. The vision here is that this is going to be a clickable link to TOPS One, which is going to be our management website. It's a separate website. It'll be the website that you access for all things like contacting Gina if there's a landscaping issue, if there's a maintenance issue, if you get a letter from the HOA for your lawn hasn't been mowed or whatever. Like all of that interaction will happen via TOPS One, and that'll be front and center on the HOA website, which will be, you're seeing right now a bunch of numbers because we haven't made the transition yet. We're going to vote to do that tonight. But that'll be, what is it, ccppoa.com. So pretty straightforward. So it was mentioned previously, hey, do we have a place to make announcements? So I put in a slider here. I built this, by the way. I put in a slider here, just a quick note for announcements that we have coming up. A place here for HOA meetings where we'll put the minutes linkable and the agenda. You just click on it, and none of this is complete, the links, by the way. So, but you'll be able to come in here, click on this, and then be able to access the minutes and agenda directly. James, I need your finger.
This is a .com though to go to it?
It will be.
Yeah. So currently, we should do a comparison, right?
It'll be CEO, PPA, whatever,
Right.
once they do the transition, but.
So this is what our website currently looks like.
Right.
That looks like the,
You can see it's
do
pretty-
the website version, not the mobile version.
That is
I don't
the
understand why
website
I think that is
version.
the.
This is the
We
website.
need to shrink it down and we go to the mobile version. Brian, if you F12 or you're using F12 and then you can click OK and then,
We got it.
yeah.
Yeah. So essentially what you're looking at is.
So is this a WordPress backend? Okay. Do you have DDoS protection, all that stuff?
Yep.
Okay. Because you know I'm gonna test it, right? Just to make sure.
So I currently host websites on AWS. I will
Okay.
host this for the community for free. That's going to cost me about $20 to $30 per month
Okay.
to support that, with the vision of transitioning that cost to the community next year. So we'll include that in the budget. We don't have to spend any more money. One thing for the board members to consider, right? The previous website,
Because this is what I did
very
6 months ago.
straightforward, I guess, in terms of updating it. as Adam had indicated, this is WordPress, right? WordPress is very simple for anybody who understands WordPress. If you get in there and make those updates, that's pretty straightforward. But anybody who doesn't, it isn't something that you could just pass on to anybody and be like, hey, make the magic happen. So just something to consider.
So who do you envision managing the site?
What I would like to do is find a person similar to my Terry, who is responsible for coordinating volunteers, a volunteer within the community who's responsible for making updates to the website, an IT guy.
I would advise against that. I mean, I'd limit it, very, very limited.
Sure.
So
my vision is it would be limited to one person.
Like
Conversely, you could pay somebody to do this. Or
like
the
I know I had one thing on the sample site which I took down, you know, current meetings to where it would add to your Google Calendar, your Outlook calendar. Do you have that type of functionality and stuff like that in here? So none of that stuff's there. Okay. So
thoughts?
Looks great. Huge improvement. It looks welcoming.
Hey,
So is it a single
I created
page?
the other one, so you're just,
Yeah.
Well, what I meant to say was, it's like when you put new molds down, you know, it's just fresh look.
Hey, I'm not a website designer.
Put it to
It's
a
good.
vote.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would like the HOA to pay for it. If we're gonna use it.
Starting day one.
Yeah, there's no reason for Brian to pay for
Nope.
it. We all do too much of that.
That means a lot to me. So we're making strides to make this the greatest place to live, and it's costing money, which is why I hesitate.
do you think COPPEA or whatever it is the best domain name possible for Cunningham Creek Plantation, whatever? Because
I
I mean,
can look at, I didn't think to.
because I mean, honestly, I could go buy.
Domains are cheap.
Understandable, but when I'm trying to say Cunningham Creek Plantation, this shows up on page 5 of Google or whatever.
Yeah, but there is a Cunningham Creek Plantation.
.com.
I don't know, but there is one on State Road 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's because somebody was gonna
Already
pick
got
me
But what
up.
I'm saying, go to if you go to GoDaddy or wherever you buy your stuff.
Yeah, the
it's
subdivision
more-
directly across from River Oaks is also Cunningham Creek Plantation.
It's currently
Or
coming
Cunningham
up more
Creek.
when you do Cunningham Creek Plantation HOA.
Is the link for Cunningham Creek Plantation already not available?
Nope.
It is available,
I mean, I think,
and I can own it for way cheaper than what Brian can own it for.
because I sometimes forget, is it CCP or CCB?
Wait.
I'm gonna buy it right now and I
I mean, I almost bought it. Like, I almost bought it.
I
Like,
mean,
I
can we
was
just make it
like, you know what?
CunninghamCreekPlantation.com then?
No,
Nothing's
that's
being
up
done.
to
Yeah.
Why not?
We could.
I think in
Because this doesn't, it's hard to remember, you know?
Okay,
Like,
it's 8:35.
Like, is it CC?
I
yeah,
want to vote on changing the website.
change it,
The look, right? Can we agree, all in favor?
change it.
Aye, that'll happen.
Wait, so you can't make a proposal. So someone on the board needs to bring up, so as president, you can't.
As
do a
president, can I
proposal.
make that change?
So I support Brian's presentation to convert to the new website and propose that we pay for it as well.
Second. All in favor?
So who's second? You got that, Gina?
You didn't go to
Okay.
the proper channels.
Now it's yours.
Oh, I learned that. I learned away a couple times.
Thank you. Yeah, we can teach somebody.
I think it looks good, and if you need help with it, I can help. I'm willing to help with it. So, if you need me to.
So with that in mind, we've, I think, voted on the significant changes that we're going to make. I'm going to work with Gina to put out a letter to the community outlining these changes so that everybody's kind of aware.
I see additional functionality that we could put on it that would make it a lot.
Yeah, let's do it.
A lot better.
I mean, it's already a lot
Well,
better.
I'm saying,
the next level.
Next level,
Okay,
right?
it's better. All right, does anybody have any last minute, my goal for these meetings is to have
I
community
do.
time, and
I have one thing, that they put a 5,000 Kelvin light, they replaced on our street on Ivy Lakes. One of the lights went out. They put a 5,000 Kelvin light, all the other ones are like 3,000 Kelvin, so it just looks funky.
Super white or what?
So,
That's the
what's
safety
Is
that?
it white?
That goes to Gina.
And the street light?
So
Yeah,
other lights
the
are all
street
yellow and this one's white?
So like, let's upgrade everything to 5,000 Kelvin.
Right.
Like, why not? I mean, that's,
Change it to LED or-
Yeah.
and change it to LED
They
retrofit.
did the one by ours, and all the rest are yellow.
That, did they do the same
I
thing?
think
Yeah,
I think it's just as they're
They're
dying.
doing
they
them as
replace it.
they,
And it
yeah.
drives me crazy, and I'm like,
When they bring.
why would you not?
I don't know if there's a way, I mean, I called JD to see if they could change them to all LED, and they said that they could do them as they.
So do I need to go bust them out?
Probably. If you're,
No, you're good, you're
if
good.
that's
I
what you're
just wanna,
doing.
Seriously, because it goes from
Yeah, yellow, white.
yellow to white.
I just want to thank everybody again for coming, spending time with us, allowing us to kind of vet some of these ideas with the community present. That means a lot to me, and I know that means a lot to the board, so thanks again.
Thank you guys.
Is that possible
for meeting our
to do?
community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Hey, James.
To ask JDA?
You can ask them.
Just reach out to Charles Aquatics, let them know we're gonna do this bid, and I think they want like 25%. Lake coordinate for you or through them, if they're already with you.
Because if we own it, because it just looks weird. It's like, well, we lease them, and then you go 1,000 feet, and there's no